and we have an associate group talking about infrastructure on Solana. As always, we're gonna first have a round of introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the project you represent.
Hello. Hi guys, so my name is Giuliano. I work in product for one of the Graph core development teams. So the Graph is an indexing technology, essentially general purpose, ETL process, extract, transform, load the data however you guys see fit to meet whatever use cases. The reason this is kind of useful is because it doesn't, pigeonhole you into, a predefined kind of structure of endpoints and things of that nature. You can really design it to meet your technological or business need. And then additionally, the Graph kind of provides, distributed loads, kind of fallbacks, and a permissionless environment to access this data, right? So you're not relying on a singular infrastructure to keep your uptime going, right?
I'm Marc from the Pyth Network Association. I've been working there for 4 years now, do most of the DeFi BD for Pyth. So Pyth is, and if you heard about it before, might think Oracle, full rebranding, it's now universal price layer. And by this we mean that we want all assets in the world have their price feed on Pyth, and the Pyth Oracle being available on as many chains as possible. Today Pyth, it's 1,500 price feeds from crypto to S&P 500, etc. Available on 110 chains. Solana is likely our biggest chain in terms of usage and value secured. In
Hi everyone, I'm Nirmal. I'm a co-founder of Chakra Labs. We're focused on building the structured database of the web. That really amounts to two problems. Problem number one, organizations really struggle today with the cost of warehousing data. So you talk to 100 users of Snowflake and Databricks. These tools are responsible for really two things, which is loading and transforming data. They're really freaking expensive. We built a product that's competitive with Snowflake and Databricks. It's built on Deep Rails. It's 70% cheaper. That product is out as of 2 weeks ago. Really excited about that. And I'd sort of split our business into two epochs. Epoch 1 was building this warehouse product. It's awesome, it works. Epoch 2 is getting really interesting differentiated data sets on platform. That's why we're really excited about building a crypto business here, is we can get data sets that no one else can. We can pay consumers, we can pay enterprises, and that's where we're focused over the next 3 to 6 months.
Hey everyone, my name is Jesse. I do product at BloXroute. BloXroute is essentially blockchain infrastructure that operates on a few different chains, a few less than Pyth, but essentially if you're looking to land transactions really quickly, you're looking to get access to data really quickly in the context of Solana, shreds, you'll come to BloXroute and get stuff landed very efficiently.
Deepa, head up BD at Helius. We have been around for about 3 years. You probably know Marc. So our core business is Solana infrastructure. We've grown quite a bit, so now 30 people. We're trying to obviously keep up with Solana, but we're excited.
Thanks, everybody. So the first question is for Marc. What differences do you see in the infrastructure compared to other L1s?
There's no other one? No, okay. So I think, especially for infra that are either only on Solana or Solana focused mostly, I think what you get or understand compared to EVM is the quantity of data you either have to ingest or digest the other way. And overall, it's way less deterministic than other chains. So it requires way more work, and that's I think why you see most EVM infra either underperform on Solana, because you can just slap your thing that worked for a 50-second block time on Ethereum to just Solana, where you have 2-3 blocks per second. Nowadays, we start seeing more L2s, especially VMs1 that goes even faster than Solana, few Arbitrum chain. But here, and actually, my bet would be that native Solana infra, like Pyth, 4 years ago, it was all happening on Solana mainnet. we're actually overperforming the EVM legacy infra because they still, for most, haven't managed to increase throughput and reduce latency. But I think actually, Solana teams have designed a way better product from day one, and now you can actually resell it and get good market share outside of Solana.
Yes, infrastructure affects all of you. Anybody else who wants to add to this? All right, then the next question is for Jess. What are the biggest challenges in scaling blockchain infrastructure?
A lot. Yeah, I'd say there are a few important ones. So when you're talking about a blockchain like Solana that's used by a lot of different people around the world, one of the main challenges is making sure that you want to basically have access points to the network that's located kind of globally and distributed very well, so that no matter what location someone's trying to use the network from, they're able to get really low latency access to that. So having good coverage around the globe. Another point is then having good kind of redundancies and fallback mechanisms in check. So you can have really good coverage, but then if you have regions that keep on going down and there's no reliability in the infrastructure that you've built out, that's going to hurt as well. So you've got to make sure that it's very reliable. And then I'd say another point is also, you can build really great infrastructure, good coverage, super reliable, but if you can't deliver that in a cost-effective way to any of your target customers or users and actually bring value to them in a way that they're able to consume that's cost-effective for their operations, you're also kind of missing the ball there. There are more, but I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, man. Deepa, how does Helius enhance the developer experience and the tooling for Solana?
Yeah, I think actually to add on to your point, I think one of the hardest parts about scaling Solana is actually the education, right? So knowing, it's like one thing to know that the chain is upgrading, it's one thing to know that we're moving to priority fees, but it's another thing to know what you're supposed to be doing on that side. So to your question, we spend a lot of time on the education piece because it's important, and if you miss it in a congestion moment, it's really important. So for us, the game is how do we abstract it away, how do we make this easy for you, how does it just work out of the box? And so a lot of things around the core businesses that we do today, which are RPCs, very basic, it's what most people would use when they start on Solana, our APIs, and then our data products. So the idea is sort of offer the basic building blocks, keep building that set out, make sure that it's redundant, make sure that we're keeping up with everything that's happening, and then continue to optimize it. I think what's missing, or what's maybe not appreciated about the infrastructure side of Solana is, as hard as it is to keep up with Solana, the infrastructure teams obviously have to do the same. And then in tandem, also make sure that our customers are keeping up as well. So sort of this nice flywheel that we get to be part of.
Thanks. Giuliano, you started the graph on EVM, then you moved, you're also supporting Solana now. What kind of changes did you have to make to accommodate to the high throughput?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kind of like Marc put, you can't slap infrastructure that existed on the EVM side to Solana due to the TPS, right? So, because, you're going to have syncing issues, you're going to have mismappings of data, things of that nature. So we really had to speak to a lot of major protocols and traders, see what was valuable to them. Obviously, reliability and performance are the standouts there, and we really built infrastructure around that. So we put together what's called substreams. This is a product, it's a gRPC-based parallel streaming engine, and by using this, essentially, we are able to ingest the block data as it's being executed, write that to flat files, and kind of read that data off to users. So this kind of removes a lot of the middleware or backend sources that people would typically and traditionally use. And what's important here is, of course, that the users themselves, especially on Solana, they're forced to kind of build out their own infrastructure, and that's not really sustainable because it's not what they're taking to market, right? They're not focused on the read layer. That's not a thing. So, and then the chain themselves, it's not their job, right? Their job is to focus on the right layers, to focus on the consensus engine. So that's where we really stepped in, was to have this high performance kind of engine that can handle the block production rate of Solana. And of course, at that point, you have to allow for different ways to interact with this data, because some people have different ways and modes of ingesting, and the traditional kind of subgraph, for example, this is a linear mapper. So some users would want something that they can access quicker. So ClickHouse syncs, straight to flat files, pub subs, direct streaming. So you have like wrappers and webhooks, things like this. Webhooks, but callback functions. So kind of anyone have other opinions here?
All right, thanks. That was a lot anyway. So. Nirmal, what are some of the security concerns while building out infrastructure for the blockchain ecosystem?
Yeah, I think a recent story that comes to mind here is this Bybit hack. 1.5 billion, very sizable. I think the largest hack ever. So not crypto, just generically ever. And I think if you do a post-mortem there, what you'll discover is they did mostly the right things. So if you think about security here, you've got to start with the basics. So use the squats multi-sig, use the Gnosis multi-sig, make sure that you have more than 2 signers on this thing. On development strategies, making sure that you check in code in an environment where there are multiple people approving that code. And so from Bybit's perspective, I think they tried to do everything right. Now the thing that's really tricky about building in crypto is these supply chain injections. So Bybit, for example, I think the theory right now is they were given a different Gnosis safe front end than any other user on the market today. And I think it's really, really tricky to identify this because if you're open source, you have far more eyes on your platform, and the community can help you sort of audit that code and make sure that you're not prone to these vulnerabilities. However, now every supply chain attacker knows the exact dependencies that you have and can go after those dependencies. And so I think it's really tricky. Honestly, I don't think we have a great solve on this supply chain injection. But I think by and large, the things to do here are careful dependency management, making sure you're covering the basics, doing regular audits, making sure that your code is signed in a reliable way. But I'm looking forward to hopefully us finding a solution in supply chain going forward.
Thanks, man. Marc, how does Pyth's data oracle impact the DeFi ecosystem on Solana?
So Pyth was launched in 21, was I think the very first Solana DeFi hackathon. I don't know if it was very DeFi oriented. And it was that time where you had the Mango of the world, Solend, Drift likely. So early on, like the Pyth Oracle as originally was fully built on Solana. And so for the longest time we just had to nurture and care about Solana, which was great. But the world's bigger than the Solana, sadly. So we have to accommodate other people that usually dislike Solana very strongly. But it's been amazing to see, like even today, I think more than 50% of the value secured by the Pyth Oracle is on Solana, mostly from Camino, Drift, and you still have some Jupiter perps here and there, and Solend, of course, or Save now. And it's just amazing to see like 5 and now way bigger, like 30 DeFi teams that just keep it iterating, or great tech-wise, but care end user, UX, and get like traction. On EVM, like sadly or not, it's like all the new L2s, and it's fork on fork on fork. So it's just not sad. Sad is not the proper term, but it's not very enticing. Or on Solana, every day a new guy. Texture this morning, so P2P loan, that kind of already happened on Rank 5, but you have a very committed team and you just want to help them develop.
Nice. The next one goes to Jesse. What methods do you use to improve transaction speeds and efficiency?
Yeah, so BloXroute a while back developed this, what's called a BDN, basically a blockchain distribution network, and that sort of forms the bedrock of a lot of the products that we've built on. And essentially, if you think about these decentralized networks, they communicate in a peer-to-peer fashion. You're looking to propagate stuff from one node to another node to another node to get it to where it needs to go. But through some, smart people doing some cool networking and routing stuff, you can think of it as a way that you're basically getting a direct highway or fast route to get where you need to go. In the context of Solana, when you're submitting a transaction, you got to get that to the leader as quickly as possible. But it's also a little bit more than that. So you got to get it to the leader. The leader only has a certain amount of bandwidth. That bandwidth's allocated differently depending on where it's receiving the transactions from, in terms of how much stake does this validator have. Validators with a lot of stake will get more bandwidth from the leader. So we offer a few different ways depending on the use cases or requirements from the user. If they really care about not getting front run or sandwiched, which some people care about, there are protections there where we work with companies to kind of make sure that transactions are bundled and protected. If you just care about getting included really, really quickly, there are stake validator partners that we work with that allow transactions to get to the leader super quickly. And ultimately, it results in users getting what they need in terms of performance and reliability.
Thanks. Deepa, the next one is for you. I would assume that many people have an opinion here as well on the panel. What are the biggest infrastructure gaps that need to be filled?
Yeah, I'll speak to maybe our core business. So one is obviously account calls. So things like get program accounts are one of the most widely used, if not the most widely used call on the RPC side. That is really heavy, and as a heavy call, it obviously requires a lot of latency, which obviously, to that earlier point about making things easy, does not make it easy. Makes it slow, makes it expensive. So making that faster, so we have a few solutions there, but we think that's a big one. The other one is obviously gRPC, so that's data streaming. So if you're monitoring, many pools over many programs, that gets really cumbersome, and so gRPC is a good way to do it. We think gRPC is a good solution. We have one, multiple people do. It's expensive, and so that obviously prevents accessibility. Obviously bringing that cost down, making it more accessible.
Anybody else wants to ask?
I would say that one of the frustrating things about being a Solana developer is the observability of logging today. I think if you go to the EVM world and you look at the context of how to decode logs and make them something you can use for your business, how many daily actives do I have? What is the quality of those users? How many of them convert over time? How many of them churn over time? It's much easier to write these queries against the EVM than it is Solana today. I think that figuring out the read layer, both at the RPC layer, but also on an archival basis, is something that I think we need to prioritize as a community. We need better Dune experiences. We need better flip side experiences. It's just really hard to trudge through Solana logs to figure out what's actually going on.
Yeah, I mean, to echo a little bit of what Nirmal was saying, right, is the archival node. So the need for an archival node is becoming kind of clear. It would definitely help a lot with the user experience, specifically because of account state, or like account changes. Some of you may be more familiar. These things are not. There's no historical source for this. There is teams like ourselves who are starting to store the data, but that doesn't mean that we have stuff like very, very old, right? So to have an archive node to be able to replay the history, get these count states back so that you can back process on this data for whatever needs you may have, that's super important. And then another pain point that I think is a lot obvious to a lot of Solana developers is the IDLs. So there's kind of, like Solana has backed a certain framework, but we know that there's room for change there. And the problem with IDLs currently is the versioning, right? If there's a new version that's released, that's a breaking change. There is no backwards compatibility. There's no historical of these things either. So if you're trying to reprocess history again, you're kind of stuck with the most recent version that works. And then, so there should be some sort of locking mechanism there. And then also I find that some of the different IDL providers in Solana produce different versions. And what I mean by versions is kind of the implementation is different. And that's a little bit of a problem if you're trying to traverse between the different kind of providers, right?
All right, the next one is for Nirmal. As a DApp developer, how can I leverage Chakra to improve my DApp?
I think it might be just helpful to talk about performance overall, because I'd say we don't specifically fit in this category. I get in this framing with a junior developer very often on, we're building an application, and sometimes I'll go to him and I'll be like, hey, this is slow, can you fix it? And it's funny to see how he traverses through this problem, because it's some level of like binary search. He'll like start at the front end, then he'll go to like the database, then he'll go somewhere in the middle. And I think like building Web3 apps is no different than building Web2 apps, in the sense that you kind of just have to ask yourself, what is the bottleneck? And once you understand what the bottleneck is, you can optimize around it. And so when you're building a Web3 app, it's really no different in the sense that having good monitoring, having good logging, understanding what piece of the stack is the part that's actually slow gets you like 99% of the way there. And so if it's the RPC, you know, you can go to Deepa and give her a hard time. If it's if it's the database, you can go, you know, sort of figure that out. If it's the backend, you can go figure that out. But ultimately, it just starts with good monitoring, logging, and then sort of constraining that binary search to a much smaller problem plane than it originally was.
Thank you. Anybody wants to add here? Or? Yeah. Oh, I was looking around, but we are out of time. Sorry. Give a round of applause to our panel.
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you. How have you been? Good, great. Oh, thanks. I lost like a lot of weight. Hey, are you Marvin? Okay. Yeah, I'm Marvin. Man, nice to meet you again. Yeah. Are you in SF as well? Yeah. Still? Still one mission?
No, I live in the East Bay. Opposite Hayes Valley. In Montclair.
Oh, wow. I was in Oakland before I moved to Puerto Rico. Wait, I want to go to
Come by? Okay, great.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. I mean, can you finish the slide?
Yeah, I will. Hi, guys.
Alright, guys. Stay safe.